Hey everybody, it's Peter, and this is a fun series because this is the best value or the best used bikes I can find in certain categories. And today we're doing the best used bikes I can find in the Commuter series category. And I'll talk about what that means to me, but these ones aren't really that used. So I'm filming here at McLean Sports. They have an amazing used vehicle department, tons and tons of used bikes and stuff. And this is a 2024 Eliminator. It's August of 2024 right now. And this is a 2023 Kawasaki Versys-X. So Kawasaki Eliminator versus Kawasaki Versys-X. Both of these I think are great commuter bikes, and you could say, okay, they're in the beginner bike category, but I already made a video on the best beginner bike I'd found, which was the BMW G310, so that GS. So these ones are gonna call commuter bikes. Of course, they work great with beginners as well. And if you're interested in these bikes, again, give a little thumbs up for the video for McLean's because they have a huge used bike department and they're letting me film anything I want, and they always let me film anything I want in their store and say anything I want about them. So what we're gonna do with this video is go through these in detail, talk about why they're great commuter bikes, and talk about why you may wanna get them new and you may wanna get them used. All right, so full disclosure, if you want either of these bikes brand new, they're identical and they're literally just up the road at Jim Gilbert's Power Sports. That's the Kawasaki dealer that I film at as well. I've done a lot of reviews on each of these bikes on their own as new bikes. This one's gonna be a little different because I'm gonna focus on them as commuter bikes, and we're gonna talk a little bit about the benefits of being used. And some of you in the comments have talked about things. The first thing is, of course, price. You look at these as beginner bikes maybe, but they're a little higher price than some of the other beginner bikes. I think you get more on these particular bikes, which is why they're probably some of the best value used bikes I found. But they also, you know, when you get them used, they eliminate some of that price fear that you may have. So that's why we're reviewing these too. So this is good if you're looking at new or used. These two happen to be at McLean's right now, but again, just up the road, same thing's brand new, so you've got your choices. All right, what is a commuter bike in my mind? Well, a commuter bike should not be a 750, 800cc motorcycle. It should not be something that is sort of, I mean, it can be by all means, but a great commuter bike to me is something that is a inexpensive bike to buy, something that's gonna give you a lot of reliability, something that's gonna give you not a lot of insurance costs, not a lot of gas costs, and it has to be comfortable and versatile enough to use as kind of an everything kind of vehicle. So in other words, it should be something that can replace your car without costing what your car costs, right? That's kind of my idea. So maybe you drive a pickup truck and you want to have some fun zipping around town, doing your running around, getting the things you need to do, going to the stores, going to work, that kind of thing. Both of these are going to do that, and they each have their own sort of way of being versatile, and I'll talk about that as we go. So to me, commuter bike should be cheap to insure, cheap to buy, cheap to fuel, but still something that is versatile enough to run around town, run out on the highways, and do your everyday kind of stuff. Now, both of these could do longer trips than that. You get to the point when you start going on really long trips, more, you know, different bikes are better for that. So commuter bikes is day-to-day activities, relatively inexpensively. Let's start with taking the review. We'll start at the front wheel of both these. We'll work our way through. So if you've ever seen my videos before, you know I love to start at the front wheel because the front wheel tells you a lot about the manufacturer's intent of this bike. And Kawasaki will tell you that the Versys-X, the only X model in the Versys lineup, is a slightly off-road model, and you're gonna see some off-roady type things here. Now, I did not choose it as my best entry-level off-road bike. I chose the BMW as that because I think it gets a little further, and that's the best used ones that I found. I think there's also the KTM 390, that's probably a little better off-road, and you get into a different price point when you start looking at those new. This one here is gonna show you that it has some off-road chops, but I still think it's better as a commuter bike than a pure off-road bike, and we'll talk about why based on what we see here. So first of all, right off the bat, you have an ABS on the front wheel that's non-defeatable. So you could pull a fuse, I suppose, to get rid of the ABS, but ABS is a great thing for a commuter bike. If you're gonna be driving rain and, you know, sun and rain, whatever you need, you've got the ABS on the front wheel. Disc brakes, a single disc brake on both of these. They're not particularly heavy bikes. They're not insanely fast bikes. They're certainly fast enough. That's not a problem. So single disc is just fine by me. The ABS ring is important. The spoked wheels hint at some of that off-road ability. What I would say is this spoked wheel with this larger 19-inch front tire. Traditionally, sport bikes and a lot of commuter bikes have a 17-inch front tire. Actually, both of these bikes are larger than that. We'll talk about that in a second. But the 19-inch front wheel is gonna give you a little bit better pothole handling. Along with the spoked wheels, it's gonna be the same sort of thing. The tires themselves are technically, they are called Trail Winner GP210F. Technically, they have a little bit more of off-road tread. What I like about that is, while you can go down the odd gravel road, it's not really a trail bike, although a lot of people have gone down trails on this. It does give you a little bit of versatility, a little bit more tread, and that can be fun, especially for a commuter bike where, like, hey, maybe you want to go explore on your commute and take that dirt road home. This bike's going to be capable of doing that, especially on dirt roads, not so much on the trail system. Then there are better bikes for that. So larger front wheel, great for potholes, nice and strong, and somewhat off-road, but perfectly good on-road tire. So over on the Eliminator, you have some of the same features here. So ABS ring is in there, single disc is out here, suspension's the same style, non-adjustable, just traditional fork, that kind of thing. It doesn't have the spoked wheels, but again, it's not a 17-inch tire like on a lot of sport bikes, it's an 18-inch rim, 18-inch wheel, and that does give you a little bit more, you know, larger tire, a little bit better for some potholes potentially. It also has a little more rubber on this for a typical entry-level type bike. It's a good size front wheel, 130 wide. It's actually wider than your typical sport bike across the range. A typical sport bike from the bottom end is usually a 110 wide, and the top end, all sport bikes, go up to a 120 wide. This is a 130 wide, so you get a little bit more tire on the road on the front on this, which I think is kind of a nice thing to have as well. So a little bit larger diameter, a little bit larger tire. All of those are going to be great for in town, especially in pothole type areas. This one, of course, not built to show you any off-road capability. I wouldn't take it off-road, but one other similarity is, although it's not an off-road tread, you do end up with more tread on the tire here than you would a typical sport bike, which again makes it good if you get caught in the rain. You've got a little bit more grooves there to evacuate that water. So a lot of similarities there right off the bat. Next up, we're looking at the heart of the bike. We're moving back to the Versys-X here, and this and the Eliminator have something in common. This is a 300cc or 299 or so cc, formerly Ninja engine. So the Ninja engine was brought into this back when there was a Ninja 300. The criticism against the Versys-X is Kawasaki moved on from the 300 in their Ninja to a 400, to a 451 or a 450, which they now call a 500. So this is kind of an older engine for Kawasaki. Now, what people forget to realize is there's a lot of bike manufacturers that just don't move on from engines. While some people would like to have a little bigger engine, this one still serves its purpose well, and it has been proven to be reliable. And whether you own an older Versys-X, again, if you're finding this Versys-X, whether it's older or newer, you're still getting the exact same engine. It's in a brand new model. So this one's only a 2023, but if you had a 2021 or something like that, it's still the same engine they're producing on this model as of the time of filming. So known to be reliable. Reliability is a good piece. It's got about 39 horsepower, which is a little bit more than the BMW we looked at the other day, which I think is around 38. You do get more in the Eliminator. Let's take a look at that engine right now. So the Eliminator engine, you'll see no fins on this. I want to be clear, both of these, even though the other one had sort of the fins on the side, both of these are liquid cooled. They both have a sort of semi-hidden radiator out front. The Versys-X with more bodywork hides it better. This also was a Ninja engine at one point. It started as the Ninja 400, which was the replacement for the Ninja 300, and then they just made the cylinders or the pistons travel just a tiny bit further to go from a 400 to a 451, but they can market it from a 400 to a 500. So it's a 451cc engine, which means it's 52 cc's more displacement than the old Ninja 400, which, if you think about it, doesn't sound like a lot, except that it's an entire Vespa engine and then some, more than the old Ninja 400. It's got about 48 horsepower, but it's got more power everywhere. So it's just enough to give you a significant power boost percentage-wise over the Versys-X of the 300. But again, you know, both are going to be capable of doing what you need to do. Both are high revving. They've got good power for what you need. But this one is a little more muscular, and again, less of a purely beginner bike that you want to move on from, something that you could stay with on this bike. So other than being inexpensive to purchase, inexpensive to insure, inexpensive to fuel, and having things like ABS brakes, one of the most important things about a commuter bike is comfort. So let's start here on the Eliminator. Now, here's where things get a little interesting. I'm about 6 feet tall. A lot of the time, motorcycle manufacturers that are making smaller displacement cruisers make them for shorter riders. So again, at 6 feet tall, I might look a little big on this, but it still is comfortable for me. There is in Kawasaki's lineup the 650, so they have to kind of differentiate where they want to go with this now 500 as they market it versus their 650, which is actually, you know, 200 cc's between them, because this is a 451 versus a 650 or 649. So Jumping on here, it is absolutely a lower seat height, and it is really, really light around to move it around between your legs. So again, you can look up the specs on these two bikes to figure out which one's actually lighter, but we're talking things about seat of the pants, how it feels, all the practical things. So you can see as a 6-footer, easily I got my legs down. If you're shorter than me, not a problem. If you're taller than me, it may be an issue. Now, one thing I really like about this bike is the seating position. A lot of cruisers put your feet forward, which is fine, but I find that to be a less traditional riding position compared to what I'm used to, right? A lot of, other than cruisers, everything has your feet here or a little bit back. Cruisers have them out front. So this to me is a very in control feeling. And because this bike is so light, it's actually, you know, only down a couple horsepower from their 900 cc, Kawasaki's 900cc Vulcans. It's way lighter as well, now has way less torque than those. But the point is, this thing is still kind of quick. And because it's kind of quick, this seating position allows you to kind of tuck into corners, kind of get things going. So it is a little bit sportier to ride, but you can see as a nearly 6-footer, this is about as big as you'd want to be on this bike from a legs sort of perspective, in my opinion. I find this quite comfortable. Now, moving over, and I should point out the seat here is very cushy, very comfortable as well. Moving over to the Versys-X. Jumping on here, a much taller seat. Now again, going for that adventure bike kind of look, I'm still easily flat-footed with knees bent. So while it is taller, the narrow seat here at the front especially does make it much more accessible. When you're looking at specs on a bike and you're looking at seat height tells you very little when you're comparing a couple different bikes, because the seat height, it can feel lower if the seats are narrower. This seat is relatively narrow. It is also relatively firm. Some people complain that this isn't a comfortable seat for them over long haul. I don't have a real huge issue with it, although of course that one is probably a little bit more comfortable. Seating position here, surprisingly, is kind of similar. I'm relatively square. In fact, I think the Eliminator had me a little bit more forward, but I'm relatively square here and I'm relatively upright here. Both of these bikes, you're not leaned over, you're not leaned back, you're in a very comfortable and actually sort of similar position when riding. So again, same thing, a very commanding riding position. This one comes standard with a windshield. This one has an aftermarket windshield. One of the complaints about the regular Versys for some riders, especially taller riders, is that the windshield might be a little small and adds some weird buffeting to your head. So I don't know how if this accessory one does a lot better, but it is a little taller, seems to be a little bit broader than the one that comes with it. And that's gonna give you a little bit more, certainly pressure off your chest if you're on a more of a high-speed commute, like highways or something like that. So a couple little benefits there, but seating position-wise, despite the complete different look of these two bikes, kind of similar. So staying here with the Versys-X, another key thing to a commuter bike is it should be able to take some sort of luggage. Now the Versys-X actually comes standard with this rack. That's part of what makes it a little bit more expensive than, you know, some of the other bikes. You get a lot of extra pieces and parts on here standard. The windshield, I'll show you a few things in the dash, as well as the rack here. But this rack is standard. You can get Kawasaki hard lockable bags with it if you wanted to. But to me, if you're going for that commuter type thing and you want something inexpensive, you hop on Amazon, you get your soft luggage that sort of latches onto here, or even if you want to be cheaper than that, you strap your duffel bag right on the back there. You've got some places right here where you can tie things down. You've got the bars here, you can tie things down. Right away, you can take luggage, you can do your little shopping and do your regular stuff like that. Strap it on, take your gym bag, take your you know, bag of stuff to work. And again, if you want a lockable storage, you can get it on this as well. So that to me is a real key piece to a commuter bike. And you may be thinking, wait a minute, the Eliminator doesn't have a rack. Let's talk about luggage on that bike. So over here on the opposite side of the Eliminator than we were on the Versys, you can see just a seat there, but what these pieces do is allow you to have Kawasaki accessories or aftermarket accessories. You can bolt some bags on there. Now I'm sure there are hard bags. I traditionally see soft bags on cruisers, but the point is same thing here. If you're doing your run around, taking your gym bag, taking your stuff, you have a seat to strap things to, which of course that seat pops off. You could strap stuff underneath, but you also have these sort of hard mounting points, which allow you to have, again, factory accessories or aftermarket accessories that can bolt on here. And cruisers look great with bags, so it's not uncommon to see a cruiser or an adventure bike with bags. It still fits the style and you've got some practicality to go along with it. So I'm filming here in broad daylight. Some of these dashes can be harder to see, but we're gonna turn it on for you and you can sort of see what you've got going on here. So a very good display dash here, not up to date with all the TFT displays that a lot of bikes have nowadays, but that doesn't matter to me in my commuter bike, because what I care about is the information. So what you can't see on the angle I'm filming at is there's a little fuel gauge on the top left there, there's a temperature gauge down there, you've got your odometer up top, again, just over 1,000 kilometers on this used bike, so again, that depreciation hits there, but you still have basically a new bike. Speedometer down there, and then you have a number of features down there. It's listed as range in kilometers. You've got fuel efficiency. It's listed in kilometers per liter. You can get liters per 100 kilometers, miles per gallon UK. You can cycle through that. So that's instant fuel efficiency there, average fuel efficiency there, and then there's your range to empty and back to everything. So that you've always got one of them available there. And actually no clock on this. I'm a little surprised by that, but I thought I had, oh, there we go, there's the clock. The clock underneath the gear indicator. So everything you would want, plus an analog tack, which runs up to 12,000 RPM. This thing has no problem revving. Remember, your tiny little pistons are moving very short distance, so they can move very, very, very quickly without causing a lot of issues on a small engine like this. So don't worry about revving this engine. It's been proven reliable even at high revs, and that's what you have here on the dash. We'll take a quick look at controls before we go to the dash of the Eliminator. Left side controls, first of all, you have one of the lightest clutches in all of motorcycling here. It is a slipper and assist clutch on both of these bikes. This one's a hair lighter than the Eliminator, maybe just different style with the 300cc engine versus the 451cc engine. But overall controls are pretty good. You've got your flash to pass, which I like to have, gets people's attention, high beam, low beam, signals, and horn down there. And then you do have over here a hazard warning light or four-way flashers, which I think on any kind of adventure slash commuter type bike is just something that's good to have. Just gets people's attention when you need it. If you have to slow down, maybe it's a foggy day and you're hitting your brakes, you're blending in, whatever it is, you have the option to get people's attention in busy traffic, and also of course to pull over. You've got those as well. So really nice to have that. The other side, start switch and a kill switch. One other thing I should zoom all the way out here for is you do have the handguards here. That's going to give you a little bit extra weather protection. So if your commute involves cool weather, that's something that's nice to have. It does, you know, keep those stones off your hands, that kind of thing, if you were to go off gravel roads, but it also just keeps you a little bit warmer. One final thing I want to point out here is you do have, if we point in there, a space to put a USB plug in there and a space to add, you know, that's built for Kawasaki's accessory lighting, but you can add something else there if you want to switch and that kind of thing. So you have places to put things on here, whether you want to add a GPS in the future or something like that. Again, just nice things to have on a commuter bike, but also make it a little bit more practical than some entry-level bikes. Jumping over to the Eliminator, we got to keep the style of the cruiser, right? So we got to go with the little round gauges there. But Kawasaki introduced in 2024 a new cruiser gauge cluster that's digital, and it has a few things that are kind of nice. Now the tack, a little bit smaller than you see on the Eliminator there. Redline's 11,000, so not quite 12,000. Both these bikes rev up. They'll be reliable doing that. Shouldn't be an issue. Then you've got some of the same information down here. You've got your odometer. Again, less than 1,000 kilometers here. So a little over 1,000 kilometers on the other bike, a little under 1,000 kilometers on this one. Fuel gauge down low. You can see the Bluetooth is blinking. This actually can compare with an app from Kawasaki, so it is a nice step up from the Versys-X, and it gives you a whole bunch of just random information on the app. One of the nice things about pairing to any app is an app is easy to update, so you could potentially add features to that app in the future. It can tell you basic things like maintenance, you can track stuff like that, you know, it can track a bunch of different things. It depends on the bike on what that Kawasaki app will do for you, but that is something that's nice to have here. A lot of midline bikes don't have that yet from Kawasaki, but this being a 2024 has that piece. You've also got a gear indicator down here and a lot of the same information, clock up top there, a lot of the same information that you had on the other bike. Let me just cycle through there. Trip A, trip B, fuel efficiency is instant, then average, and then your range, and then back to the odometer there. So some of the same information. Warning lights, I don't know if you can see them just up top there, as well as a big warning light down there. So you've got all the basics right there for you. Again, simple dash. Let's take a look at the control. Let's see if we can do that without cutting from here. Again, slipper and assist clutch, so it's a light clutch, but it is a little different. Just a slight bit heavier, but again, probably one of the lightest clutches in motorcycling. If the Versys-X is the lightest one that I've felt, this one's right next to it. Same basic control stuff here. You've got the flash to pass, you've got the switch for headlights, high beams and low beams, signals, horn, and the hazard warning lights up there. So same controls on both these bikes. They didn't always put hazard warning lights on some of these slower displacement bikes from Kawasaki. Again, just a nice thing to have on a commuter bike. So while these bikes may or may not be right for you, we should talk about why I chose them, just in case that helps you decide if they're right for you. So why I chose them as the best used commuter bikes I could find so far. First of all, this one. This bike, because it has some of that technology, is a little bit more of an expensive entry-level bike. Now, when I say entry-level, I mean a lot of people look at bikes when they're starting out buying, especially in this area where insurance rates really vary based on the engine size. They start comparing this engine size to other engine size and they say, hey, this is a little bit more of an expensive bike. And it is. Now, I think there's value in that, but buying it used, especially a bike like this with under 1,000 kilometers, takes a little bit of a depreciation hit out and you still get basically a brand new bike that you can use for commuting. It's a very good bike and it has some features, like I said, that updated dash, that Bluetooth connectivity, LED lights all around, which we didn't even talk about. It has some nice things and it's very comfortable for a cruiser and also for a small cruiser. There are other small cruisers that are really wimpy and just not enjoyable to drive, something that you're going to want to move on from. This is a bike I don't think everybody's going to want to move on from right away, and that makes it a really good bike. This one here is interesting to me because the technology on this one is a little older. When we talk about technology, none of that modern Kawasaki dash stuff. The engine that again is not only the previous generation Ninja, it's the previous generation Ninja now. Ninja 400 is back to Ninja. So we go Ninja 500, which is really 450. Then we go Ninja 400 and we go back to Ninja 300, which shares an engine with this. So some people find this to be a little higher price as well, especially next to it in the showroom is a 400 or even a 451cc Z bike or like a naked bike, something like that, that is maybe a little better value for them. I like getting the wind protection. I like having the taller seat height. I like having the luggage rack on here. And I like that if I put bags on it, not only do they fit, but they just look right on this bike. The 300cc engine, a lot of people scoff at. They want it to be bigger because Kawasaki makes a bigger engine, but the reality is for commuting, this would do just fine. So which one would I choose? I love the Eliminator because it reminds me of my first bike. I had one that you sit the same way and it was a comfortable bike and I did 7 and 8 hour cross country, like multi-country trips on it. It was a little 250cc and a 450 would have been great for me. I do think if you're doing that, this one might be a little bit more comfortable for some of that. But I think I would choose this one here. It's already set up for my kind of thing. You could head down the odd dirt road. You've got the extra weather protection, which for me is going to extend the season. And I like sitting a little bit taller. It seems to fit me just a little bit better. So even though that's a 300cc, if I was just choosing a bike as a commuter bike, I think I would choose that one. However, overall in the biking world, probably this 450, you know, is going to give me a little bit more legs, a little bit more stuff. And again, I can make this do what I want. I just have a gravitation myself and preference to an adventure style bike or a sporty style bike. That's usually what I buy. And so that's why it appeals to me. If this appeals to you, it's just as good a deal. So new or used, again, new up the road, Jim Gilbert's. McLean's has no problems with me saying that. Everybody knows it's just up the road, a great dealer. But if you're looking for them used, they're sitting here at McLean's right now. I don't mention prices in these videos because I don't mention prices in any of my videos because sometimes there's incentives from manufacturers on new bikes, and on these ones, again, if McLean's decides to set the price today and drop the price tomorrow, then this video is out of date. So check the link in the description for up-to-date pricing on these, and of course to check out new vehicles, new Kawasaki's. Any of my Kawasaki videos have the link to the dealer up the road for those new bikes. There you go. Thanks everybody for watching. Give it a like. Keep going with this series if you want, and if you want to subscribe, that'd be great too. Tell me the kinds of bikes you'd love to see reviewed, used, or the best commuter bike you've driven in the comments. We'll talk to you in the next one.